Welcome, Adam. It's great to have you here. You have just graduated from our mentorship, and I believe you started in February 2022, so almost a year. Almost a year. And I remember our first call. You had heard about this program, you had heard about the mentorship. I'm not sure where you heard about it, but I'm sure you're going to tell us. And then you found me. I don't know how you found me. I think you did a Google search or something and you got in touch with me. But what made you get in touch?
So I think anyone who approaches these sorts of programs, they're looking to improve, they're looking for answers. So I knew that mindset was really important, and I knew I needed to do work. But I didn't know where that was going to come from. Like, I just didn't know. And I was, I'm a motivated guy. I'm into personal development. So I was searching for things. So how it all came about was, and this is really random how these things happen, but I had my old hairdresser from when I was in my 20s. She moved to Canada like 8 years ago. And, you just have friends on Instagram just because you knew them, right? Yeah. And I saw her profile one day, and she was coaching. And I was like, oh, cool, because actually that's what I do. I'm a coach. So I said, hey, why don't we connect? It's been like 8 years, and we used to get on really well. Yeah. So we jumped on a call when she was, talking about what she was doing, and she says, oh, I've been doing this Thinking to Results program. I was like, what's that? And she was telling me how amazing it is and how transformational it is. And I was like, wow, okay. So that just left me curious. So then I was like, right, okay. So I just got on Google. I don't know what I searched for.
As you do.
And then came across yourself, and then we booked in the call.
Okay, yeah. And I remember you were very, very skeptical at the beginning. Most people are. You were very skeptical. You had a lot of questions. And that's good, because obviously that enables you to get your skepticism out, and it gives me a chance to kind of flatten that skepticism to a certain degree, so that you can actually move into the right direction that you want to, but maybe there's some fear attached to it. Now, you were quite versed in the law of attraction. You're quite versed in manifestation. This is not like your first kind of take into the whole personal growth industry. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, so you're right. I was definitely skeptical, because there's a lot of different courses and products and services out there. So that's one side of it, and you've got to be careful where you invest your money. The other side of it was, I've been into this personal development space for a long, long time, and I've always approached it from a very logical perspective, right? And so I knew what that stuff was about, and I was like, yeah, cool. That's their thing. They do their thing, but it's not really my cup of tea. I didn't fully acknowledge it as an actual, because I remember reading Think and Grow Rich like 7-8 years ago, thinking, oh, okay, cool, but it's not for me. That's really, that's faith. So that was kind of how I approached it. I just thought, no, it's about being logical and like hustling and work rate and blah, blah. So I knew of it. And I accepted, hey, listen, that worked for some people, but for me, I was like, that's just doesn't resonate with me. And I remember on the call, our first call, it's interesting reflecting on it now, because obviously you were trying to navigate my beliefs at the time, right? Yet trying to keep the call going. So I knew it was a thing, that way of thinking. I didn't think it was for me. I didn't think it was real. But on reflection, is when you study something on a surface level, 100% you're never going to fully really get into it and understand it. And I think not only has this program taught me how to think, how to be different, but also it's taught me how to learn differently. Because I would always be like, get the book, read the book, done the book.
Yeah.
Actually, now that is a waste of time now. And I realize how you've got to really study a book and go back through it. And that's something I've got hundreds of books. And now I realize it's not just read the book, I've ticked it off, and now I know everything from that. It's not, you know nothing from that book. You know about 10% of that book. So you've got to go over and study. And when I have sessions with my clients, it's interesting now. I'll say, hey, you've got to look at this mindset stuff. Yeah, cool. I bought that app Blinkist. It's like tells you everything in like 2 minutes. Yeah. Did that. And I have to say that's great, but that's not going to do anything. If anything, that should be a prompt to be like, right, do I decide to invest my time in it? That's not, you've done it. But I used to come from that trail of thought, like, yeah, cool, got the main bits, bang, 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 off we go. Yeah. So it taught me how to think and how to learn as well, which I think was really important.
Yeah, because the thing is, we're taught how to study and how to learn in school, and we grow up throughout our adult life thinking that is the correct way. But what thinking into results helps you do is to help you, kind of gets you to unlearn what you've learned, because you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to unlearn what you've learned, or unlearn what you think you know, and learn it from a new perspective, because your paradigm is so controlled at doing things in a certain way. And when you come across this process, we're teaching you to do it in a different way to what you and your paradigm is used to. And I think that's where the real transformation takes place, is learning from a different perspective. And it's interesting what you just said as well. Yes, you've been in the personal growth space for a very long time. You've read a lot of books, etc., but you didn't really understand it, or you didn't really apply it. And you still had some disbelief around law of attraction, manifestation, all that kind of stuff. So what do you think has kind of shifted in terms of your understanding of it now to what you've probably learned on your own X amount of years ago?
So I'd say the biggest shift, which is bananas, because I never thought I would have got there, is there's a more of a spiritual element to me now.
Yes.
Which I never would have thought. Again, I'm like, logic, that's how, but now, as you study the material, it's like, well, that's really how it is. It's and not to jump in and give too much away, but it's when you understand how the world works, how energy works, and whether, me saying I'm spiritual, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to believe in a God. There's all different words for it. People have heard of like chi and prana and life force, but there is something to it, and it's something that is in us, it's through us, it's all around us, and it's something that you can work with. And when you start to allow, I think the biggest thing was allowing, because the paradigms, my belief system was, I get it, I understand it, I respect people that are into that stuff, but not for me. Kind of think it's nonsense. But when you start to allow that process and that energy to flow through you, like crazy things happen. And as the things happen, your paradigm wants to say, "Oh well, but that was just a bit of luck." But then so much of it happens. You're like, but it can't be. It can't be this consistent good stuff happening. It can't be just luck and whatever. There's an energy that you can tap into, and there's a different way of thinking that you can tap into.
Yeah.
And really, it was just allowing it to come through. And I think a lot of that comes from just the repetition of the material. So one of the kind of principles I liked was, people have to see it and then they believe it, right? But in this material, it was like, no, believe it and then you'll see it. And that was hard for me. It's like, believe it and I'll see it, but that, applying that, and then I realized I've done that already in my life previously, right? This room is a perfect example. This is my, not brand new kitchen now. It's about a year old, but this was a big project of mine 2 years ago. And I was seeing it in my mind over and over and over. So I was believing it was possible, and then it came true. So when I first heard that, rather than, I'll see it, then I'll believe it, to believe it, then I'll see it, I had to then look back at, well, I've already done that without even realizing I've done it. Right. And then when that then gave me belief in, okay, that is real. And then you start working with it. So a lot of these principles you've already done without even knowing you've done. but because the conditioning within culture is so strong and how we've been raised, it's like family, then it's culture, then it's, you know, global kind of culture, you know, all of this stuff, it's not really given much of a lens, but it's there, and there's people that are doing it. And the only point I would say is you start to learn this stuff, and then you go out into the world and you realize I've got these superpowers now.
Yes.
And everyone's thinking like how I used to think, but now I'm thinking differently, and then I can see people's paradigms, and so you start to, it's like, it is like a superpower in a weird way, like, because you're given these tools that we've always had within us, we were given them, but you awaken them, you know, like the imagination, reason, will, intuition, all these different tools. So that's another thing I didn't even realize. I could start to be out with friends or family and be like, paradigm or this, or, you know, just observing things.
And I think that's such a good point that you've made, because this whole process is about understanding you and knowing you on such a level. And when you really get to know you, that's when you can start to understand other people. That's when you start to understand why they behave the way they behave. That's when you start to understand why they think the way they think, why they're acting the way they're acting, you know, why they've got belief systems that are in place that are not really serving them. You start to understand people better. And when you start to understand people better, you become non-judgmental.
Yeah.
Because when you're judging other people, you're actually judging something that's inside of you, right? Because we're all connected, coming back to this whole energy thing. And I also remember on the first call, and I'm laughing about it now because you've literally just said it. I think I mentioned this to you before in our one-on-ones, but you asked me, this is not all God and spiritual, is it? It's not a God program. I just couldn't stop laughing. But now you've just said, and I had to answer that in a way where it's not a God program, but there is a spiritual element to it. And you've just tapped into that, because you tap into your spirituality. You tap into who you really are, which is a spiritual being.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I remember asking that question, and, you know, it's funny now what I know, it's hilarious to look back. Because again, what lens was I viewing that through, right? And it was a lens it was a paradigm that I had been given and I'd incorporated. And as we learn on the program, that paradigm isn't new. It's just a bit of software that you can be like, right, I don't want to use that anymore, and there's another paradigm I can tap into.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's been a lovely evolution. And also when you know, you talk about, you can see things in people, or you might get triggered by people. It's also learning that everything's energy. So if I'm going to allow someone to upset me and put me in a low vibration, that doesn't serve me. So it's to get out of that frequency, that energy, that vibration as quickly as possible. So that's whether someone says something rude to you, or whether you're in a bit of a bad funk yourself, always focusing on being in a higher vibration with your thoughts and the words you speak. Because, and again, this took me a while to get, but the law of attraction, you attract attracts like, right? That's why, you know, your best mate, you'll be similar. You're into similar things. You like a football team, they like a football team, right? So if I'm only thinking in good positive energies and good thoughts and good words, that's my vibration that I'm kind of floating at. So I'm going to attract like. And again, that concept might, you know, challenge some people's thoughts, like, really, okay, we're going into woo-woo land. But again, it's just, you do it and it happens and you're like, oh, right, this is nuts. So making sure that I'm always in a good vibration. And I know, you know, I'm sure the viewers can tell I'm a high vibe guy, but, you know, we all have our moments, right? But when I have those moments now, I'm like, snap out of it quick. I'm not entertaining that. And also when people, you know, hardly everyone's ever rude to me, but if someone triggers me, I know I deal with it quick, because I don't want to stay in that vibration. And I also understand where their mind is at, right? Or how they're thinking, you know? So again, when you say understand yourself, you understand how the mind works, number one. So then you can once you get how the mind works, and then you start thinking stuff, you're like, right, okay, how does the mind work? So then let's relate it to how I'm thinking right now, because clearly I'm not different from everyone else's minds. So that's how you can start to understand yourself, because you can be like, oh, okay, right, I'm thinking this. I've done this study on the mind, which I've learned over and over and over. So really it's nailed into my brain now. So let's apply that to what I'm thinking. And then you can, from that point, you can start to change behaviors and habits, things you probably didn't even realize you would do it.
A lot of it's subconscious, isn't it? So what have you achieved since going through our program, our mentorship? I'm sure everybody wants to know what you've achieved from this, apart from, and I think this is the most thing, I don't want to kind of undervalue this, but the most important thing from achieving this is understanding who you are, and then understanding how your mind works, so you can use that mind to start to then manifest the tangible stuff. So what have you achieved through this process?
Yeah, loads of things. So we did a whole house renovation, and you always think it's going to be, you think it's going to go a certain way, it never goes the same way. So we had to find finance, and so that was a journey, and that was all now finished, and it's great. So we were kind of midway through the project when I joined the program. Beyond that, I was in a job for 7.5 years that I knew wasn't serving me, but there was always a reason to like stick around and do it. So I've left that job, and that's freeing in itself. I have found a lovely way to make revenue and income beyond the 9 to 5. And my coaching business is also part of that, but that's also starting to thrive as well. So again, it's this sort of program. Would I have been in this situation if I hadn't have focused in on learning about the mind and doing all this? I probably wouldn't have. I probably would have continued. I think the worst case scenario would have still been the job. Second worst case, I would have then found another job in the same industry that I didn't really want to do, but it's like, oh, it'll be exciting and fun, and I'll, and then in a year's time, you're in the same spot where you don't really like what you're doing. So I think it causes you to make big decisions. And the other thing as well is this element of faith, which is another thing. It's like, okay, faith is such an important part of the process and of Napoleon Hill's work, and faith in the source, the divine, God, Chi, whatever you want to call it, whatever resonates with you. And so I now have faith in process. So when, there might be things that really cause you, a fear response, you can have faith in the process. And even saying that, within the program, there's a way of walking you through, Bob calls it the terror barrier. But again, they teach you mindset tools to process those emotions and those feelings, right? So again, I wouldn't have known all of that. So I probably would have been like, I'll stay in the job or find another job that I'm still not really fulfilled in. So that's basically most likely that would have happened.
Lovely. I love that, because yes, I think one of your goals was to quit your job when you first came, or when you first had that call. I asked you what your goal is. It was to quit your job, which you've done. The other goal was a money goal.
Yeah.
So if you want to share that.
The money goal was £15,000 a month.
15. And
I remember we were kind of negotiating, because I was like, do I do 20? I was like, I just do not believe in 20. So let's do something that's more realistic. And I remember us kind of going back and forth on it, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in and there and around now. And what's interesting is, I remember thinking there is no way. There is no way I'm going to hit this. This is like fairy dreams, like, fairy tales.
I remember these calls that we had, Adam, and because we meet up, anybody who takes part in our mentorship Thinking to Results program. As Adam said, it's a 12-month program, but it's actually 6 months, but you get 6 months free with your investment. And in your one-on-one calls that you were having, which you get once every 2 weeks, every time I was speaking with you, the money goal came up, and I was like, okay, so what is this money goal? And you'd set the money goal, but the disbelief was very strong. You didn't believe you were going to hit that. So go on. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think it was important to mention that. So go on. You've hit it. So now your belief obviously has strengthened.
Yeah, I think it's again, some of the elements of the program, having a goal, writing it down, reprogramming your brain to look for certain things. So again, we talk about coincidence or things manifesting or whatever, but when your brain is programming and then actively looking for things, like opportunities would come and I'd be like, oh, that's whereas normally it's similar to like you buy a Tesla and all you can see is Teslas, or you want a Tesla, right?
So you're on that vibration.
Yeah, exactly. So I just started to look for opportunities, and then certain things came along where it was opportunities to make passive income. So with all these different things that I've been doing to create passive income, along with the coaching, it all adds up to that amount. But again, because I set that goal and I was writing it every day and I was reading it, and the repetition, your brain, basically we become what we think about is the main kind of headline, right? From Napoleon Hill and Elle Nightingale. So when you're only thinking about certain things, when things come into your environment, you'll be like, will they help me or not? And so you naturally just start to find, or you could say you're in a vibration, you attract them.
Yeah.
So you just start to see things, and then opportunities came along, and I was like, oh, that could be it. And then and then they paid off, and it's crazy how it works, but it's just getting on the right frequency and having belief in the process, that you just gotta the key is there's no quick fix, there's no 10-week plan, there's no like 21-day step, that doesn't exist. You got to just do the work. But the work is fun. I enjoyed it. I loved it, And when you do that, you're just programming the brain, you're increasing your awareness, and then you start to allow things, and things happen. But if you think you can just, it will just come to you. There's work required, but the work is fun, and it's great when things start to happen. And that's the thing. I think in culture we're sold this: take a pill, convenience, subconscious minds. How was it formed? It was formed through time, space, repetition, right? So that's the only way you're going to change it, and that's turning up and just doing the work. But it's beautiful because you start seeing the momentum, and it's like, wow.
And you start seeing the results. You start seeing eternal shifts. You start seeing the tangible results. A couple of things that you've just touched on, which I want to just kind of focus on. You mentioned, you're a coach, right? Coaches need coaches. Okay. So, you were looking for somebody who could help you and get you to the result that you wanted. A, to quit your job. B, to turn your income into 15,000 a month, and now you're going to double that. You're going to get to 30,000. So I always tell everybody to double it. So your next goal is 30,000 a month, and you can definitely do it. If you can do 15, you can do 30, right? But you had a lot going on as well. Like you had you had the extension going on in your house, so you had renovations going on, right?
I think
it was completed, but you were doing the kitchen. Was I right, or was the extension still going on? I'm not sure.
So the kitchen was happening.
Kitchen was happening. So you're having a brand new kitchen fitted. You were getting married, so you had a wedding to organise, and you invested into yourself, into your mindset, into this program. You got yourself a mentor. What would you say to those people who kind of put it off because they say, and this is an excuse, and this is why I love your energy so much, Adam, and you were a perfect client, because I'm very selective with who I work with, but you had this energy where I don't care what's going on in my life, I want to do this, so I'll find the money. And you found the money, right? So what would you say to people who maybe are saying, well, no, I've got this to do and I've got this to pay and I've got this going on, and they leave it, and I'll do it after, and I'll probably wait a year, maybe 2 years, and then it never really happens. What would you say to those people?
you know what? It's how much do you want it? You know, like I said, I'm a coach and I've been into personal development for a long time. And I knew it was mindset. Like I help many people. I've improved a lot in my life, but I realized there was this mindset piece that I hadn't worked out. Right. So I knew that. And I knew that was something I had to fix. And I knew I could do it, mate. So, and I wouldn't have known this at the time, but I would have probably said it was my intuition saying, this feels right. I know this is it. You know, I know when we first spoke, we had a great bond, and you telling me about the program. I knew of Bob Proctor, from YouTube, so it felt right. And then I think with any purchase that is of a certain amount, there's a little bit of you got to feel good about it yourself. So I knew I wanted to do it. I just had to feel good about it, right? So then I'm like, okay, so. And then you want your approval from your partner. But I knew I was going to do it. It was just, I know I'm doing it. I don't want any feeling of like, buyer remorse, which obviously I never had, but I just wanted to feel, yeah, this is it. So I just knew, it just felt right. And yeah, you just find the money. And at the same time, weirdly, sometimes the money will just appear as well. That's the weirdest thing. So yeah, I think we had the chat, and I knew it was what I needed to learn. And then I made a decision after the first call. I knew it was just then just right. How do I find the money? And then how do I mentally feel good about it in my head and then go for it? What I would also say is, for anyone who's a coach out there, it's elevated my ability to coach as well, because now I'd occasionally have people that I would coach and I just couldn't. And I was like, why can't I get through? And now I understand how the mind works. And I tell them things to work on. Probably the best thing would be for them to go into the program. But again, I can coach better because I understand how the mind works now.
Yeah.
So that's been another gift that I didn't realize I'd get.
Yeah. It goes back to when you understand you and how you work, you can then understand others and you can help them. And that's what this has enabled you to do. And it's elevated your coaching business. I've had a lot of coaches that I've coached. And I think the fascinating thing is coaches do need coaches. And that's the biggest thing here. But yeah, you've been a fantastic student. What made you think that, okay, I need to get a mentor? I'm a coach myself, but I need to get a coach.
I've had many coaches over the years, and you're never going to do it all on your own. So that was a no-brainer for me. And I'll continue to have coaches as I go to next levels and new areas that I need to learn about. I'll get coaches in those areas. So that was never really, that was like a no-brainer for me. I get, if you want to do well, work with people that have got to where you want to get to, or they know things that you need to know. So that was really a no-brainer for me. But with the whole mindset thing, it's insane how much our subconscious mind runs the show. I mean, it really is. It's insane. So knowing working with an expert like yourself who understands it, and I'd also say we had the curriculum, which was great, amazing. But then the value I got from you personally, Alpha, in terms of your level of understanding would elevate my awareness a lot quicker. And then you'd have books. I mean, the amount of books I've bought that you recommended, I mean, there's so much more than just the videos and the program and the workbook, which are all great value. But then you who've studied it, I'm just coming out my first year. You've been doing it for a long time. So your level of awareness is so much higher. So, we'd be in the 6 a.m.s and you just drop like an absolute, a nugget of great insight that you'd only get if you'd been in this stuff for a long time, right? So then that just takes me from like this level to that level straight away, because it's like, it could have took me a couple of months or whatever working that kind of connection out, but you've just been like, no, think this way, So that I'd say was of real value for me, and that was again just turning up every day, doing the work, and the 6 a.m. sessions, and that's where I really further elevated my understanding in all of this work.
Yeah, and for those of you watching, because you mentioned 6 a.m. a lot, 6 a.m. study club is part of the mentorship, is part of what you get. It's where we actually collectively all get up at 6 a.m. Well, we don't get up at 6, we get up a little early, but we're here for 6 a.m. and we're having a study session together. And this is where we're masterminding, because it's great minds that are coming together. This is where your ahas come from. And this is what's elevated your success very, very quickly, because you are on those calls every single day. I don't remember a day where you weren't on there. Maybe once you may have not been feeling well or whatever, but you were on it. And that, again, that just showed how much you wanted your goal. You were just so passionate and dedicated. So hats off for you for that, and well done. It just shows in everything that you've achieved very, very quickly, and everything else that you're going to achieve. What would you say to those who have a paradigm around money and investing in themselves, or think they can do it on their own? Because I know when we first spoke, and you mentioned it just now, that you had to speak to your partner. And there's a lot of people who say, I've got to speak to my husband, or I've got to speak to my wife or my partner. And what I always say, because this is what Bob used to say, is that, yes, fair enough, you're married or you're in a relationship, but you're not married in the sense of where you've got to ask for permission.
Yeah.
Right? This is your own thing. This is what you want for you. And that's what people don't understand. There's a really good recording that Bob did, and I will try and attach it to the end of this, because I've just remembered when he actually talks about this. He's diffusing your paradigm on when people say, oh, I've got to ask my partner. You already knew in your mind that you wanted to do it, but what would you say to those people who are coming up with those kind of, and there's the only word that I can come up with, it is an excuse. It's an excuse to talk yourself out of the very thing that you said you wanted, because you're listening to somebody else's opinion. What would you say to those people who've got a paradigm around money, investing in themselves, or think they can do it on their own?
Yeah, I think with the whole partner thing, I think that can just be a great excuse, number one, but also it can just be they want approval. So I didn't need permission from my now wife. I wanted her approval, but even if I didn't get it, I was going to do it anyway. But I think that's one psychological element, because if you're investing X amount, you want them to be like, yeah, go for it. Which I knew my wife would be. She's into this whole space as well, so I knew she'd be like, if you want to do it, do it.
Yeah.
I would say in terms of the investment, don't get me wrong, parting with any sort of money can be an emotional process, right? That just is what it is. But you have to weigh up what you want to achieve, and if you think you can do it on your own, then no need to invest in any sort of type of development. The reality is we all need to keep learning. We don't just finish learning when we finish school or university. We have to continually learn, and you have to learn from people who are in positions where you want to be, or have the knowledge that you want to have, right? So for me, that's part of my rationale. It's like, right, okay, it costs this much, but how much is it going to cost me if I don't do these things, in the long run? And I'm not even talking financial, I'm talking like emotional, I'm talking, just your happiness and your fulfillment and all of that sort of stuff. So for me, I'm very proactive in, like, beyond Bob Proctor, and I'm always investing in everything. I'm one to learn and grow. So it's easy for me to come to those sorts of decisions. For people that may not, it's just, do you want to pay now or do you want to pay later? Right? That's the reality. It's like, I get it. It can be emotional to part with any sort of money, but the reality is, like, you're going to be in a lot happier place when you do the work and you grow. And I'm not saying paying financially later. It's like, you might pay with a life that you're really unfulfilled with, So you just got to weigh it up. You got to, if you feel, of course, that this is right for you, and then something inside says this looks like it's what it has to be, then, I would really urge people to move forward with it. But again, I had that it felt right. We had the first conversation, what you said the course was about. I was like, this is what I need, So it was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just got to put yourself first and invest in yourself, you know, and it pays off, because in the long run, you know, it's like, you think about the person you could become, investing in yourself. What's the analogy of like a plane changes like 1 degree and then like it ends up in like New York and London? Like if you invest and go through that, you can end up over here, versus if you do nothing, you can end up there. And over time, over years and months, it's a big difference. So this stuff is a no-brainer for me, you know, and I'm so grateful now, the springboard it's given me in terms of how I think. Even the stuff I'm now like reading, like the stuff I'm like, because again, I'm always reading books, so now I'm buying books on like manifestation and all of these different things, and you know, so it's great. It's just like I never would have even looked at this sort of stuff, and then as I'm reading this stuff now, I get it instantly. So when I talked about reading Think and Grow Rich like 2 years ago, I read it and I was like, okay, I don't really get it. Oh, it's an old book from the 20s here. You know, they don't know, they don't talk like normal people talk now. I was just, you know, this is a paradigm. Whereas now I read it and I'm like, yeah, get it, yeah, understand completely. Because now I understand it and I understand the words and the terminology. Whereas before my paradigm was like, oh, from the 1920s, they didn't know what they're talking about.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of people have read that book and they've not really done anything with it. They've not achieved anything through it, and so they disregard the book. But actually that book, yes, it was written in the 20s, 30s, but it created more millionaires in the Great Depression than ever, and it's continued to make millionaires through it, which is why Bob read it for 62 years of his life, the same book again and again and again, because that's where he made his multi-millions from. But he applied what was in there, and he got a mentor who could explain to him what is meant in the text there. So yeah,
that's the foundational book. But there's so many other great books that you recommended, like Neville Goddard, The Power of Awareness.
Yeah,
so many great books from nearly 100 years ago, and trust me, they had it all worked out. Like, again, the paradigm I had was, well, it's not the newest book that's been released by this cool author with 2 million Instagram followers. These are these are hardly known, these authors, right? But trust me, they worked it out. They worked out how the mind works, and
and what they've written in those books applies today. To this very day, applies
more than ever. More than ever. So that's the stuff I read now. I read like old school books. Remember the all of Neville's collection.
Yes,
that's the book I'm reading.
Here it is. I've got it here.
That's what I'm reading.
Neville Goddard has written. He's a godsend, Neville Goddard is. I think even just his surname, Goddard, the first 3 letters just says it all. The man is just a mystic. He's a genius.
Yeah. But what he's saying is, it's like, you want to find the answers, read those books, right? But again, no, you don't hear about them. And again, in my mind, that's the gift. No one knows about this stuff, and they're amazing.
And those that do, they're applying it, which is great, and they're seeing the results. But again, you got to know what you're doing. That's the thing. You can have a book and study it. There's a lot of free information out there, but if free information was going to do it for everybody, we'd all be very happy. The whole world would be a happy planet, and everybody would be multimillionaires and living the life they want and whatever, having the relationships they want, health, everything. But it's not about the free education. It's about actually investing in yourself and getting somebody, like you've just said. I don't need to repeat it. My last question was, you've already answered it, was would you recommend our program? Would you recommend the mentorship? But you've already answered that. You can answer it if you want.
100%. It's been a beautiful journey, and it's crazy to think how different I now am, in an amazing way, just how I think differently and how I view the world differently. And I've learned tools and skills that I'm always going to take forwards in everything I do. And that's what a gift, but as I said, it requires doing the work and turning up. There's no quick fix. But that said, it's a beautiful process. I enjoyed it, and you said I never missed a call. The only times I missed calls was when I was either on a flight.
Yes, you're on a flight. That's right.
Or I think I was sick once. I'd be in Greece, I'd be on the call. I would be, wherever I was, I'd always jump on the calls because I wanted to get that set the tone of the day and keep my mind thinking on certain things. So to be,
and you're so good that you even ran some of the 6 a.m. clubs.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You were my trusted mentee that I could leave you running the 6 a.m. clubs because you got it, and you were so good.
Yeah, and the people you meet on the 6 a.m. as well, like some beautiful people,
Yeah.
So it's a lovely thing, you make some good friends, and and you definitely bond with those individuals because you're there together every single morning.
Yeah, and you're on that high vibe. All of you are on a high vibe. You're there to lift each other up. You're there because you're in the same boat. You're learning the same information. You're helping each other, and it's just fantastic. So, and you continue those relationships. I know you've continued a lot of relationships with the people that you've met on the 6 a.m. club, and it's fantastic. I just want to say thank you, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you. Thank you for your time today.
And I just want to say, Alpha, it's been a pleasure working with you on the program. I've learned so much, and very grateful because of all the different skills and tool sets I now have. It's been a very transformational experience. So thank you.